You are the founder of the Research Intelligence Unit, a highly acclaimed company that is celebrating 20 years this year. So tell us, how did this journey start?
Okay, so the journey started 20 years ago now. And back then, things were probably more different than they are now. What I witnessed firsthand with my own eyes was the asymmetrical relationship between the developed world and the institutions of the developed world, the aid institutions, the development institutions, etc., and the recipient countries and their agencies, which often didn't result in the best outcome for any kind of aid or development project. So basically you would have an intellectual distribution in favor of those representing the aid institutions dealing with developing world, which was often not equipped to deal at the optimum levels with the developed world when it comes to an aid project or a development assistance loan or an advisory project. So in all cases we witnessed that there was a role for Research Intelligence Unit, for us being from the developed world but having a ground presence in the emerging world, and being emerging world and developing world centric, we were able to come in and facilitate a better relationship, better dialogue, and ultimately better outcomes between the developed world institutions and the emerging world institutions in order to make our effort to try to maximize the benefit for the recipients of development assistance and projects. And that's actually the vision, and that's how we started. Now since then we've expanded in our networks, we've evolved, we've used local wisdom and international expertise in order to provide our services to not just government and sovereign entities, but also to local governments, to multinationals. We're into new markets, to private sector, etc. And we've hopefully made a very strong contribution in that effort to increase the impact of any initiative, especially when it's from the developed world to the emerging world and the emerging market. Unfortunately, we've seen really good take-up on the whole in terms of things like the poverty levels in the emerging world reduce, and we've been happy to say that we've been part of projects that have been a social sector to reduce poverty, to increase education status of the population, to reduce malnutrition. So all of those things, we're happy to see that over 20 years in countries like Sri Lanka, we've seen and we've firsthand witnessed these things coming down and going in the right direction. So yes, very, very thankful for our contribution there.
What do you consider are the company's most notable achievements?
So as I said at the start, we played a greater role in the social sector. So being part of that massive effort to reduce child nutrition in the developing world, in the emerging markets, helping deliver benefits of peace, dealing with refugees, internally displaced people, and working with the various agencies in order to deliver those benefits was definitely an achievement in the early years. Since then, the Research Intelligence Unit has been very much more commercially oriented, and we're really amazed at the kind of response that we've had from the private sector. At the last count, we facilitated about $700 million in project financing, and this money, and then to witness it over the years transform the skylines of emerging market economies, watch these cities develop and grow, and to see the skies silhouetted with amazing new buildings, new malls, new apartment complexes, housing projects, etc. So that again we feel is a huge contribution that we have made, and obviously any money that comes into an emerging market has a trickle effect and benefits multiple people. It helps to create jobs in multiple sectors, similarly like tourism projects. New hotels generate new jobs, and all of these things will facilitate the emerging economy transcending up towards the developed economy status. And we also have been doing a great initiative connecting investors and investment opportunities with diaspora communities, and this too has also helped to strengthen the bond between communities in the globe and get them involved in the development process where developing economies is concerned. I think these are the biggest achievements that come to mind immediately.
RI Unit is a company with international reach. Tell us, did this evolve over time, or did the company kick off in multiple locations from the onset?
So we started in the UK, and that's for personal reasons. And I studied development economics at university. It's probably the only really thing I personally excelled at and did really well. And for that reason, I think development economics is all my passion. And as the founder of RIU 20 years ago, this was the driving, motivating factor. But again, then for personal reasons, RIU moved to Asia, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Maldives, India, and more recently Nepal and Australia. And we've always had a presence in the Middle East as well. So the vision is definitely international. We'd like what we do to be of service globally, especially in the entwined relationship between the developed world and the developing world, and to optimize that. And fundamentally we believe that information is really important for a capitalist economy to function in a way that is just and efficient, and the availability of information and affordable information to smaller companies, individuals, investors, and people at large who participate in the economy, I think is very important. And it's a philosophical, fundamental belief that we have a right to information in order to participate in a capitalist free market economy, and that's what we're in at the moment, for sure.
Can you touch on some of the reasons why RI Unit has been highly acclaimed for its work?
Again, good question. I think the most important thing in that regard is that we are a proactive team. We're a group of people who are proactive. We're not reactionary. We don't just do surveys and things. We actually have surveillance systems in place. So we're like the eyes and ears on the ground for our clients and for ourselves. So we are continually collecting data, qualitative data and quantitative data that is useful market intelligence. And given the volatility of markets and economies and geopolitics in the current state of the world, I mean, we can hardly keep up. It's that fast. So the important thing is that we are proactive. So that's one of the main reasons why we feel we have been acclaimed for what we do. Another reason is that the whole team values ethics and values the truth and values hard work. And these ethics are really important for any organization to flourish. And we have been through a heck of a lot in terms of challenges, pandemics, lockdowns, economic crisis, debt crisis, you name it. The world has been full of it, and we're still not totally out of it. Cost of living is still a huge problem in many of the markets where we operate. So yes, it's been challenging, but we're essentially acclaimed for having a team that has good ethics, professionalism, etc. And our structure, which believes in being proactive. Have been acclaimed is that our forecasts have usually been spot on in specific industries. For example, in illicit markets, highlighted to governments that if you try to ban X, Y, and Z, it's only going to stir up and give rise to an illicit market, which is going to be essentially untaxed paid. An untaxed paid illicit parallel market in a developing economy can be disastrous because tax revenue is so essential, right? The treasuries of these governments need every penny that they can get. So when you have these situations where a parallel market is sucking out 10, 20, 30% of what would otherwise be taxed, it's a huge policy problem. So we try to flag these. Similarly, in real estate, we flagged areas that are going to take off based on the fact that we have surveillance on what's happening on the ground, and where we have tipped certain regions to take off in real estate. Again, our team has been spot on, and we have got we've managed to forecast this, and our clients have managed to benefit from that, and had very lucrative investments in areas like that. So these are just some of the reasons why I believe that the company has been acclaimed for what we do.
Which sectors does the company cover for its market intelligence services and studies?
Sector-wise, our unit covers anything that is included within the sphere of economic activity, and also in many areas social interventions. Some of the sectors that we've really excelled at include policy advisory work, and specific industries where we specialize in include real estate, construction, power and energy, health sector, and we also have expertise in other areas like IT, the impact of technology on banking, property, things like that. So sector-wise, yes, we do specialize in a few, like the ones I mentioned, but really we have done things on umbrellas, on various agricultural products, on agricultural technology and the impact on the ground. So anything that needs research and needs to find out the truth of something in terms of impact and outcome, we're there.
Tell us, what does the future hold for the global economy, and where do you see RI Unit in this future?
Question requires a crystal ball, but let me try to explain some of the really important factors that are going to shape the world in the next few years in our view, according to what we see. So geopolitics is a major factor that drives change, and it's going to continue to have a really huge impact on economies by region. So the divides and the cracks in the global geopolitical scene are already there and already evident, and we see clear lines, and I think 95% of the world tends to fit onto one side or the other in terms of geopolitics. I won't go into that here, but what we see in the West is that there has been a slowdown, and there has been recession, there's been cost of living crisis, and we, from a company, according to the data that we have been looking at, is not anything that we should be surprised at. The fact that certain policies were enacted during pandemics and lockdowns necessitated a certain market reaction, a reaction in inflationary indicators, supply chain, etc. So these are not things that we should be surprised at. These are things that we were expecting, and they've happened. But how the media and the politicians spin it to the people in all parts of the world is different from the fact that we shouldn't be surprised at the fact that the globe is going through a certain level of recession. Now, on the plus side, I think we believe there will be slow recovery and in the West, and this is of course good because the West is essentially the market for most of the emerging economies in terms of consumption. So that should not change too much. However, new practices, new ethics, new ways of doing things in line with sustainability values, etc., will shape it and will in some ways stifle the growth in the West. But on the other hand, new technology, if it is to the benefit of people, the technology that's green will come in and help to stimulate the economy. From a regional perspective, countries like India, China, Turkey, and South Africa, Brazil, these countries will play a very pivotal role in stimulating and being a catalyst for growth within the regions where they operate. And I think these economies may prove as important to emerging and developing economies in the next few years in terms of keeping them going, because they cannot only rely on the West, whilst they do need the West for the market. So it'll be an interesting time. It'll be a time of growth, some growth, but it'll be again skewed in different ways, and geopolitics will play again quite a huge role in in how that new wealth is distributed. But if you take a 30 or 40-year history of the global economy, then the current time would definitely be categorized as one of those periods which we would have to say is a challenging period of time. So difficult, but I think we will navigate our way through this.
What challenges have you faced, and do you reckon for these to be different from what you may expect in the future?
Challenges. Okay. You mean apart from wars, pandemics, lockdowns, supply chain crisis in the cost of living and political crisis, apart from those? Well, the other challenges that we face on a daily basis is that we are bound and rooted by a set of ethics. To some degree, we may be considered as Sharia compliant in terms of the values that we don't engage in, for example, the arms trade work or a casino we would not engage in. So there are certain ethics and values in terms of corruption, engagement with people in power, and the way things happen on the ground are not always in line with our ethics. So that can be a challenge, and that continues to be a challenge. But hopefully that will be minimized as countries become more middle class. And I should also add that we have an advisory board, and they're very strict in terms of what we can and can't do. The advisory board consists of people from the UK, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Maldives, etc. So as I said, they hold the values important, and anything which is in a grey area, we would always consult our advisory board and make sure everything is ethically sound in order to proceed. So these are little challenges, but I think we're happy to be tied by our value system, which is important. Ultimately, it's what keeps us going.
What drives you as a person and as a business leader?
What drives me? As a student, I was really driven by development economists who were very critical of some of the things that the international development agencies were doing in the 80s and 90s. Many of these things wreaked havoc on the recipient countries in Africa and Asia. And again, that comes to the asymmetry of capacity and intellectual capabilities that we mentioned earlier, the reason why RIU came into being. So these things really drove me to study development economics, to understand the mechanisms and the intercourse between different parts of the world and why we are in the current situation. So from that, then the belief that we can make a contribution as a company. We're not going to change the world, but we can make a contribution and push in a certain direction that we would like to see. And we believe if enough people make a contribution to push the economy and the world and ethics, and the notion that information should be available in order for people to engage in a market economy, and enough players are pushing this idea forward, then we think it'll make a difference. So we are not capable, or we're not here to change the world on our own, but through our work, through our efforts at work, we feel we can make a significant contribution to change and positive change. So I believe that's what keeps our team going, and that's what keeps me going as a person.